Welcome to Get Free To. I'm Chris Arredondo, co-founder here at Cargo Chief and host of Get Free To, where we combine automated workflows with efficient lane management to help brokers reduce their reliance on load boards, grow revenue, and maximize productivity. In our podcast, Get Free To, we cover unique topics going on in the world of freight with industry experts, from best practices, tips, tricks, new products, and whatever else impacts the industry. You name it, we'll talk about it. Mitigating risk has been a big problem over the last few years, where the places you're looking today might not have all the red flags and alerts needed to prevent the next claim from happening. In this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Danielle Spinelli from MyCarrierPortal, who shares her insights and background as a broker for nearly a decade before joining MCP, and gives an overview of how critical any onboarding and vetting tools are in any market. We talk about the transition from manual PDF onboarding packets to digital solutions that help significantly reduce the processing times to minimize human errors. We also touch on the evolution of MyCarrierPortal and discuss some of the challenges of fraud in the industry, the necessity of robust vetting processes, and the benefits of building strong carrier partnerships to meet market demands. Brokers, carriers, shippers, there's some good tidbits for all of you. So listen in as we get free to it. Hey, Danielle, thanks for joining me. Tell me a little bit, I guess, about who you are, your background, MyCarrierPortal, the whole thing.
Okay, awesome. Yes, I am Danielle Spinelli. So I've been with MyCarrierPortal for about a year now. We're right at that. Before then, I worked as a broker for 8 years, a couple different brokerages. So really coming from a user standpoint over to MyCarrierPortal. And MyCarrierPortal is a onboarding vetting tool. So looking up carriers and knowing, can I work with them? Can I not? Do they meet my company standards? And then taking that information, when they're approved, sending them a setup packet. All of that is digital, goes into your TMS, goes into Cargo Chief. Information is just streamlined to make things a lot easier. Is kind of like what we're doing.
I think I heard about MCP back when it was My Carrier Packets. I think it was like 2015 or something. So somewhere right around there. It was just after I left XPO, and we had PDFs that carriers had to fill out, and I was running a brokerage down here in Houston, and it took, I don't know, an hour sometimes to onboard a carrier, and we were still, hitting the fax machine and printing out several pages of things. And I think what you had said, you'd used MCP before. What was that like for you? And I guess how has it evolved?
Yeah, so for the first 5 years, I guess, of working, we did PDFs, we did all the whole 9 yards, still using, vetting tools like Safer and Care411, stuff like that. And then we switched, it was 2019, so right before COVID, we switched to MyCarrierPortal. And honestly, thank God, I don't even know what we would have done during COVID when we all went home. I had no idea. And so with it changing to digital, it took our processing time. Like you said, usually it's 30 minutes to an hour with a PDF, especially if you have an owner op, it can take longer. You're waiting on that packet. You're having to check everything. Did they mark this? Did they do this? Did I get this document? And honestly, before we switched over, I would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh my gosh, did I forget to check this on this carrier? Or did I do this? And just taking the human error out of it whenever we switched over was probably the biggest thing that I noticed. And then taking the processing time of a carrier completing down to 1 to 5 minutes at the most. And then keeping that information up to date. I always keep up with my core carriers because you get alerts saying, hey, this guy that you're set up with had this happen. Because a lot of times the guys that you're using day in, day out aren't going to tell you, hey, my safety score dropped. You probably shouldn't use me. So it helps you keep up with that. And so within my old brokerage, it was where, we were initially, before we switched over, finishing at 4 o'clock every day. And then we went to being done before lunch. So being able to have so much extra time, half of a day worth, to be able to book more, cover more, and really grew the business by a lot, even just with making this simple change.
Yeah, I remember we were probably onboarding about 20 carriers a day, and it was just me, who had I had the credentials in in our TMS at the time, and so nobody else could do it, and I had to go through that whole process, and I'm waiting for COIs, I'm waiting for references, because we've been burned before. We needed to have to check those references, and sometimes it's just phone tag, and all of that just led to that was the bulk of my day, at least half of it, if not more. And it's just we've got packet after packet waiting in the queue and like physically in the queue right
And
on
they're
my
of
desk.
course calling in, being like, "Hey, where's my Raichi? Where's my
Yeah,
Raichi?" And if you have a hot load, then you're like, well, "Forget everything, push it through. We gotta move this shipment." And
yeah,
then you forget things, and then that's when things get messed up.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
100%. Yeah.
and that's one of the things that you brought up to me. I think it was last week or so about the Freight Caviar had put something out, and there was like some fraud going out there. I think they called it like an
Mhm.
Ocean 11 heist or something like that.
Yeah.
What did you see, and how did like MCP pick up on the trends there that was going on?
Yeah, from what I read in like the article and pretty much all over LinkedIn, all over social media, I saw all this stuff about, I guess Agility Express was like the main carrier that was stealing loads and holding loads hostage during the holiday season. And of course, during the holiday season, you got to be super robust and really be careful out there. So I know with MCP, whenever I saw that information, I looked them up in MCP. Hey, how does it look over here? And luckily, we did have red alerts. For sure, there was two before the whole thing happened where they had recent FMCSA changes, and that's always an alert. Hey, look into what exactly changed. Maybe it was where they were okay before, they looked great, but then they sold their company, and unfortunately, bad guys are buying companies left and right. So any type of changes with FMCSA, really take those into considerations. Do your homework. And then we also had multiple customers already have them on their block list. So other customers always already were like, we're not working with these guys. So having the network within MyCarrierPortal, because we're about 3,000 customers, so having all of our customers talking to each other, saying, "Hey, we refuse to work with them," will help any of our other customers make a decision on if you have
Yeah,
this truck or this truck. Hey, let's choose somebody who doesn't have all these people blocked.
yeah. That's a really important thing. I think it's like having alerts and things like that pop up. Like we get alerts like if there's like a string of errors or something that goes on in the system, and but we're not just like actively looking at alerts or anything. They have to come
Hmm.
up when it matters, and like those sort of things. Like for in this example, I was actually talking to somebody. I think it was earlier this week, and not going to name the guy, but he's probably going to listen and be like, "Oh yeah, that was me." But so I was checking in on him and with the storms down here and everything, and it's just kind of getting an update, a pulse on kind of where we are with things in the deal. And
Yeah.
he brought up like, "Hey, have you followed that story?" And I was like, "Oh man, Danielle actually mentioned that to me." And I looked it up and I was like, "No, don't tell me, don't tell me, was that you or were you one of them?" And sure enough, it was. He got picked on by that whole thing, and I think the big thing is that there are flags in places.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just how you're interpreting information. Like maybe alerts, like having something like strong like that to pick up on information, but just other guardrails, not just like compliance
Yeah.
information. Like for us, what I had did too, and I looked into that carrier, and the only way to show up as a match in our system is like they've got to meet the compliance criteria and risk assessment set in MCP. Number one,
Hmm.
and two, how do they behave across our network and our platform with other customers in our
Yeah, that's huge.
network? And it's like this carrier hadn't they didn't run any frequent lanes, any relevant freight within the last like 6 months or so. But then
Yeah.
also their authority was, because it is automated with MCP, they were already not like deauthorized. So it would
Mhm.
that load offer wouldn't have even been put out there for that carrier to know that like, hey, there's a load for this broker. Let me go poach them or something, right? Like that wouldn't have even happened. And that's
Right.
that's like that's why like having a strong network is important, not just finding carriers, but how is your compliance data working with the carriers that you're about to partner with? It's really
Yeah.
important in how people are trying to book freight. And I mean, there's so much risk out there these days that you've got to be able to mitigate as much as you can. And I usually ask people, in a discovery call or something, I'll say like, hey, let's cargo chief aside, what's the biggest problem that you have in front of you that if you don't get a fix on it in the next like 6 to 12 months, what is that?
Yeah.
And it's very often risk and fraud and like
Yeah.
load board activity and just like lack of
Yeah, it's
control.
unfortunate. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's unfortunate the way that everything's going. I mean, obviously double brokering has been around forever and a day, and it's really not like double brokering is like the bad part because a lot of times that means you got two companies liable. A lot of times there you don't even know what's happening. It's getting delivered. Somebody's taking some from the top. You don't really know. Those type of situations are like the ones, yeah, that shouldn't happen, but it does happen. But the fraud part of it not getting delivered, somebody demanding, two people demanding money, all that stuff, of course, is terrible. So having those alerts, and then not only that, but knowing something that we're focusing on is our within our customer base is training everybody to say, hey, these are the tools that we're giving you, but do you know how to read them? This is how you read them. These are the steps that you take. And like we have a feature that's called VIN verification. So it's kind of like when in doubt, send this text to the driver, have them prove that this truck that is hauling a load right this second belongs to this carrier and not
yeah,
just, hey, yeah, they're telling me that on the side of their truck it says this because anybody can say that. So having like an actual verification and, carriers, I think, as long as you're doing things like with us, anyways, we've had it where carriers really appreciate us keeping their privacy entail as well because with the VIN verification, we're just verifying that one piece. We're not having to have them send in credentials and send in, information that is really private information.
yeah,
We're able to verify in other ways that keeps them, still secure. Because just because there's some bad actors doesn't mean, you need to release all your information that you have. So
yeah.
it's something I think MCP does a lot different than others.
Yeah, that's very there's two things that you said there. I think one is that can be overlooked, like from the carrier market. We're not like we don't target carriers as like they're not our customer
Right.
profile or a target, but there are carriers that if you're a broker and you're a carrier and the brokers that you work with are taking those extra steps, it's not to like exclude you from things that it's really
Mhm.
just to like protect you in the long run, because if that broker is going through that sort of risk assessment, making sure that you're the right fit for that freight, that way you're not held
Right.
liable for anything that goes wrong. And also, I mean, it's going to create a better relationship, I think, with their shipper and customer at
And
the
I
end of the day.
Yeah, and I think too for as a carrier standpoint, like if I had somebody drilling me with all these questions, I'm more like, hey, they're actually taking this serious. They're not just like trying to put me on a load and not pay me. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of fraudulent like people posing as brokers, and then carriers are getting screwed over left and right.
Yeah,
So I definitely think, yes, you're having to do these extra steps. Making sure that your privacy still entail is obviously super important, but showing information like, hey, the side of your or the picture of your truck showing your VIN number isn't anything that's like super private, and I'm at least sharing the information saying, yes, this is my truck, this is who it belongs to, I'm being compliant and both ways. Like we're both
yeah,
trying to trust each other. Yeah.
yeah. The other thing you said was training. I was I think I might have told you this, but I was visiting with a customer recently, and we were rolling out our Book Now solution, and it's really important to like sit next to somebody, I think, sometimes, but also like where a vendor puts a lot of effort into training, because like when you set the standard, like this load comes through our system and now this carrier books it, now every single time we get that load, this is how the carrier is
Right.
trained to book that load, because that's the practice that we want to do to make sure everything is secure. Because
Mhm.
if there's one gap in one holiday that somebody decides to not
Yep.
do that process, then things go wrong and you end up with
Yeah.
claims and just like process issues. And it's really important that people adapt, I think, to the training systems that we have spent time setting up. Like you and I have done this
Yeah.
over and over and over
Yeah.
and over, hundreds. You guys, thousands. So
Mhm.
it's we talk to more than one broker.
Yeah, and I think keeping up to date too, like kind of our so we haven't had to do marketing for the first like 12 years of us being in existence. We just
Yeah,
recently started, and kind of the biggest hang up that we hear with our existing customers is they're like, hey, why do you guys not have this and this? And a lot of times I'm like, well, we do. I think we didn't do a great job at explaining to people right whenever we launch something new and then doing training. So that's kind of our new marketing technique is to really make sure our customer base knows what we have and then making sure that, hey, you've been a customer for even over a year. We have a lot of new things. Like, why don't you schedule a training? Because it's free with us. So schedule a training. We'll just go over it real quick. Make sure
yeah,
that your processes that you have in place, are up to date because industry's changing every day. I mean, I actually went into a customer's office that was in the same town as me today, this morning, went through how their operations was. And I'm like, hey, I think you guys are doing a great job, but I think you could do A, B, and C different, and he's taking it to his team and going from there. But I think adapting how you're doing business is so important.
How have you seen, I guess, MCP evolve? I guess both from like when you were a broker to where it is today, but also just in the time that you've been there. How has it changed to kind of like the market, what the market demands these days? It's totally different than
Yeah.
what it was, I don't know,
Right.
6 years ago.
Right. I think a lot of even like me giving a demo, a lot of it instead of being like processes and hey, this makes it so easy to fill out a packet. Like a lot of people are like, okay, we get it. But really the biggest part of it is the fraud because unfortunately it's just rampant out there. It feels like it's been getting like way more within the last 2 years where, there's been more services out there and you would think it would have done the opposite. But so yeah, I think a lot of it is where we've had to really focus in, and I feel like MCP has always done a great job at this. I think it's just more making our customers aware that hey, we have this and that,
Yeah,
and knowing hey, if you get this alert, this is what you do with it, not just how oh this whatever this information is, I don't know what it means, and skimming
yeah.
over it because you're missing out, and you don't want to. I can give you a hammer, but you don't know how to build a house. So making sure that you know how to use the tools that you have.
Yeah, it's often sometimes we have legacy customers that signed up. What are we going on 6 years, 7 years now? And there are companies that signed up when we had like seat plans, and like that.
Yeah,
That's been probably 4 years since then. So,
yeah,
and sometimes like we if you're not on an integrated TMS or maybe MCP, they might have MCP and may not know it that we have a
right.
tight integration where like there's things now that like vetted outreach. A big push for us is to try to help people get off load boards, not just because
Hmm.
it's not that it's a bad product. It's really just because the market that we're in right now. There
Yep.
are times when a load board is good, but at the same time, it's like how do you take back control of the market to where your outreach to new carriers isn't just going to be noise that comes back in? Because like
Yeah.
I see customers and I see they post a load on a load board and then they get a bunch of options that come in. And that's really one of the reasons why people go to load boards, because it's easy to cover freight
Right.
off a board, but it's not necessarily the best carrier to work with or the best situation. Then it comes down to they have a 2 minute conversation, they check MCP, and then boom, they're unqualified and unfit for that load. And then you
Yeah.
just spend 2 to 3 to 5 minutes talking to somebody that like
It was
for
a waste
no
of time.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a huge waste of time where
Yeah.
that happens over and over and over. I was sitting with somebody and it happened probably 20 times in an hour, and it was
It's a
just
lot of
wow.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah. A lot of time wasted.
that there were one that were right before we rolled out this vetted outreach. Like now, whenever a load offer goes out to new carriers, it already fits their compliance criteria set up in MCP. So
Yeah.
the options that come back aren't going to be invalid. They're going to be
Hmm.
on target.
You're like, hey,
And
these guys actually look good. I think that's the biggest thing with our relationship, in our integration is that you're seeing like within your network, you're seeing, okay, these are other options. Like you can see both things, like keep building up your base, but also knowing, even though they're in your network, you can also stay up to date with them too. So this guy's good today, he'll be good tomorrow because we have that integration. It's not just they're in our TMS and that type of thing. So
yeah,
yeah.
looking ahead, what's coming up? Any new features that you can spill the beans on, or
Yeah, no, so our development team has been like launching everything. I think since we're kind of in the middle of a bunch of conferences, I know I've been like, hey, do this, do this, do that. I got this suggestion. So I know we love customer suggestions. Like really that's how we keep growing and getting new tools. So like one that we're coming out with pretty soon is making it where not just carriers that have DOT numbers, so Canada, Mexico carriers that have their own different versions of DOT there, being
yeah,
able to set up those type of carriers and then having some sort of vetting platform. Unfortunately, they don't have like the same stuff that like FMCSA has, but making it where at least we have some sort of way of vetting them, keeping up with their insurance. So that's coming out very soon. They're close on that. And then really working on updating like a more robust detection on virtual addresses and kind of like related carriers. So if it's a carrier that's it has not disclosed that they're affiliated with all these different, DOT numbers or MC numbers, getting that red alert because unfortunately with like the situation that happened during the fourth, I mean, we found like 97 other carriers affiliated with them, and we had to go in there and like mark each one of them, and we have to dig around. So making it where that's automatically up front, that's coming out here very soon. We're very close on that. Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. We tried to expand out into like Mexico cross border. The problem was like I think zip codes are pretty similar to
Mhm.
like Texas or something, and
Yeah.
but not just that, but also the channels, like the different lanes. Like you can't take a load from down South California, Mexico side, all the way down through like Mexico City. Like there's a lot of things that go on, a lot of crime that
Right.
happen in between there. So it's like when you're setting up lanes with like origin destination, it's that's not always going to be the same route. So it'd be curious to hear more on how you guys build that out because I'm sure we always have demand for that, and so maybe we could
Yeah.
expand the partnership somehow. I
Of
guess
course. Yeah.
for you guys, one of the things that we get for anyone that's listening and is on the fence of things like this, you're one claim away from your business possibly going under. And it's like a $30,000, $40,000 claim. How many of those
Right.
can you shoulder? Right. And when we talk to people in times like this and we get objections, it's people thinking about stuff, but they never take action. And it's just odd to see that. It's just like, what are you going to do next? Like, what's going to be different from like your process today? You came to me talking about like, man, load boards are crazy. Like, fraud's rampant. Like, we can't get a fix on margins, consistency, and everything is just chaos. And
Yeah.
how do we get through that? And, one of the biggest things, like objections that we hear from our side it's not usually like the value to the problem. It's usually like, well, we've already got something that we're trying. We're gonna like try it out a little bit longer. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, so if you try that out a little bit longer that you've already been trying out for the
Yeah.
last year before you called me, like what's gonna be different? And
Yeah.
inevitably they usually come back. And it's I guess for you, like different value prop, but I mean, I couldn't imagine booking a load without a
I
compliance database or
don't
anything. Or
even get it. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't
right,
understand. I've met like big companies that they're like, "Oh, we do PDF and we just check FMCSA." I'm like, "That's it? That's all you do?" Like,
yeah,
how are you not having loads stolen every single day? Like it doesn't make sense. And it's not even just like having the claim and paying out that claim, but customer after so long, like, "Hey, this load got stolen, this load happened, this happened, this happened." Customers are like, "Why am I even using you? I have brokers calling me nonstop wanting to do this, and they
yeah,
actually have a system in place." And like we are able to, sell to shippers as well. And so they're able to check like who exactly is showing up at their dock. And I think that's something that brokers need to understand too, is shippers are also double checking because they don't want to have their stuff stolen because they spent all this time making the product. So I think really the biggest thing is, having some sort of tool out there. Of course, I'm going to recommend MyCarrierPortal, but you have to have something, especially nowadays. I mean, you have
yeah,
to. And I think also just not you don't know what you don't know. So I think some people just don't even know things like this are out there. So
yeah,
really keeping up with your tech stack too. I mean, you could have had something so long ago, and just like our existing customers, they didn't know we have new things. So really just keeping up with the times, really.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess as we kind of wrap it up here, I sounds like even if you're a broker out there or a carrier, carriers, how about ask your brokers what they're using? Like, how do they just ask them a little bit of information? Maybe that will
Yeah.
start to pique their curiosity. Because if you're setting up with a broker, I mean, through MCP, everything can sort of be automated, and as a
Yeah.
carrier, it reduces the work that you potentially have to do for somebody else who doesn't have it. So
Yeah,
I,
carriers love it. I mean, I
yeah,
remember before we just had the PDF at my own brokerage. I mean, it was like I mean, I lost carriers over it. They're like, I'm not dealing with a PDF. Like, I'll just find somebody who has something automated. And then, kind of something that sets us apart as well on that front is on the carriers. Like, you can ask any carrier, what's your favorite platform to fill out a packet? And I've never heard anything different than MCP because it's so
yeah,
easy for them. It keeps all their info. I mean, it's just like 4 clicks, they're done. And that's just important. I mean, your carriers are part of your, network and your family to your whole ecosystem. So you want them to be willing to work with you as well. So
Yeah, I think
yeah.
when I was booking freight the last couple months, somebody had said, I think they rejected us because we didn't have a an online version to get set up, and
Yeah.
I was just kind of taken aback. I was like, man,
Yep.
that's wild. But
The carrier market. They can
yeah,
demand whatever. Yep.
yeah, it's wild. Danielle, thanks
Yeah.
for your time today. It's been a
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and
Yes.
we'll be in touch. And
Awesome.
salute.
Awesome. Bye.